So I always try and give a talk at a Perl conference that's tenuously linked to whatever topic. And since AI is tenuously linked to everything these days, I feel this is justified. So I guess the tenuous link here is I asked DALL-E to generate a image of a pickup truck that had crashed into a building and been overgrown by cactus plants. And this is what it came up with. And as a software engineer, I'm pretty impressed by this. As a photographer, I think it's pretty terrible. So I thought I'd start with some quotes. Today, everything exists to end in a photograph. This was by Susan Sontag, who was a partner of Annie Leibovitz. She got her start shooting music, excuse me, and worked for the Rolling Stone magazine, so she shot lots of photos of musicians, live music, all that kind of stuff. And then she moved into fashion and editorial photography for the likes of Vanity Fair. This is a photo from 2016, and it's bad on so many levels. Interesting because of that. I mean, if you look at this now, you think it might be generative AI, but it's not. My second quote is Gary Winograd. So he said, when you put 4 edges around some facts, you change those facts. Winograd was probably the most prolific street photographer of the 50s to the 80s. When he died, he had close to 10,000 rolls of film left to be processed. That's 250,000 photos. He also said that you have a lifetime to learn technique, but I can teach you what's more important, and that's how to see. And my final quote is, "What are the gaps?" by Martin Parr this year. So Martin Parr caused a bit of a stir when his color photography first got published in the 1980s. It was kind of dismissed as vernacular and snapshots. And he tried to join Magnum, and the Magnum members were a bit riled by his attempts because he was shooting photos like this. And it was like, why would you shoot photos like this? Okay, so back on topic maybe a little bit. We probably all remember this stuff, Deep Blue, when IBM beat Kasparov in '97, and we all thought we were doomed and nobody would ever play chess again. I mean, chess is pretty popular these days. Watson, natural language stuff, it won Jeopardy, I think, in 2011. Siri's back, it's Apple Intelligence now. Big data, CERN have been doing that for decades. Cryptocurrencies, blockchain, NFTs, virtual reality. Virtual reality is back, augmented reality. Chat assistants, micropayments, the semantic web. This got mentioned yesterday in the AI track. This was the next big thing when I was doing my master's 20 years ago. XML, Rust, the language that's going to solve all our problems, and generative AI, LLMs. This is kind of being shoehorned into everything now. We all probably seen this before, the Gartner hype cycle. So it feels that we're very much maybe at the top of the peak here. The scale is wrong. This peak is way up above the Strat here, the tallest building in Las Vegas. It's being shoehorned into everything poorly. So I started collecting examples of what I've seen when I was writing this talk, examples of when I encountered it in my day-to-day life. And I thought I'd just run through a few of these first. So some of these editorials, this was from back in January, I think. Yeah, January the 13th. So the hard truth about AI is it might produce some better software. And I don't think that's a hard truth. I think, yeah, it's going to produce some better software. Of course, compulsory pointless stock image included, that's what it looks like when we're programming. And then there was an article from the same writer published 27 minutes later, literally 27 minutes later, horrified by Horizon and get ready to be totally appalled by AI. For those that don't know, the Horizon scandal was a scandal that involved the British Post Office. They pursued thousands of innocent sub-postmasters for apparent financial shortfalls caused by faults in software. It was an accounting system developed by Fujitsu. So between 1999 and 2015, almost 1,000 sub-postmasters were convicted of theft, fraud, and false accounting. About 700 of those prosecutions were carried out by the post office, and families were destroyed, innocent people were jailed, and people took their lives. And it's only in the last 6-12 months where they've admitted, yeah, there were bugs in the software. Yeah. This is MailChimp. Does anybody else use MailChimp? So we send out notifications from the gallery that we have back home about events, evenings, whatever. And they started adding AI tools recently. You probably can't see it, so there it is. Write with AI. So I was like, okay, generate our mail using AI. And it came up with this. Hey there, warm up this evening with our apero, and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, it's maybe a bit too wordy, because according to our stats, about 50% of the people that get our emails open them. So you kind of want to be short and to the point. But we're targeting a French-speaking village, so I said, well, maybe you should write it in French. I was like, no, we can't do that. So I wrote the prompt in French. Il faut écrire le texte en français, s'il vous plaît. And it's like, no, we don't speak that language. I mean, it's pretty easy to call Google Translate, and you know, it's like 2 API calls to translate what I wanted. But anyway. Next thing, does anybody know what this might be? Scanner. So it's photography related, so it's a developing tank for 4x5 film. I was selling some film gear last year, so I listed it on eBay, and I wrote a description which basically says, it's pretty good, it's light tight, it works. And then I saw this, oh, eBay can now draft it using AI, so I was like, all right, okay, have a go. I generated this, which is kind of like Reddit comment level word salad, basically. Use some paragraphs or something. The thing is, anybody looking for this on eBay knows what it is already. Like, they don't want to read the marketing blurb. They just want to know that it works, it's light tight, and it's pretty good. They don't need all this, and it's wrong anyway. Apparently it's available in color and color, the English and the American spelling. It can post multiple films at once, which is wrong. It can't. I said there's some spare holders, so should they fail, blah, blah. And apparently it's aesthetically pleasing, which is, no darkroom equipment is aesthetically pleasing. It's just has to work. Can you see that? You probably can't see that. So, future-inspired flavor co-created with AI. No galleries. So I get asked this pretty frequently because I'm a software engineer, so I must have some compelling insight on AI. I mean, it's all right, I suppose, you know, but I feel like I have to proofread and review enough stuff already. Like, half of my day is proofreading and reviewing, and I just don't want to do more of it. This feels like the inevitable end state. AI commits, a command line interface that writes your git commit messages for you. Never write a git commit message again. They're definitely dogfooding this because they've got an average commit message length of 120 bytes, including the date and the author headers. So useless commit messages. But anyway, photography, which is kind of what this talk is about. Should we be concerned about AI photography, and how is generative AI going to change it? What about the criticisms and the dismissals of it not being photography? Anybody remember this? This was about 5 years ago. Person doesn't exist. Person probably exists. You know, the odds are good with 8 billion people on the planet, right? Person probably exists. Person probably exists. It's a bit kind of like that. A treachery of images. You know, René Magritte said this in 1929. The word is not the thing, and map is not the territory. The portrait is not the person. All photography is a lie. Like Winograd said, you put 4 edges around some facts, you change those facts. So I thought I'd go over some of the concerns about AI photography, like manipulation and lies. So let's look at some examples of real photography to counter those. You might not recognize this image on this side of the pond. So this was a picture released of the Princess of Wales about 6 months ago. There was conspiracies about why she hadn't been seen in public. So when this image got released, it was torn to shreds. I mean, people were zooming in at 1,000% and looking at the pixels and looking at all the manipulation, and it was quite a sad situation because she hadn't been seen because she was undergoing treatment for cancer. The thing is, this is the most PR and image manipulated family on the planet, so should we really care that their photographs are manipulated? Probably not. We have to think about intent. And it's really difficult to take a photo these days that isn't manipulated. Whenever you shoot a photo on one of these things, there's computational photography involved. And sometimes it's astonishingly good, and sometimes it's astonishingly bad. But intentions. But when I first saw this image, it reminded me of another image, which is Migrant Mother by Dorothea Lange. This was 1936, so 88 years ago, almost 90 years ago. And it came to symbolize the hunger, poverty, and hopelessness endured by so many Americans during the Great Depression. You probably can't see it here on the projector, but do you notice anything slightly odd in the bottom right-hand corner? I'll zoom in. There was a thumb removed in post. So the photographer wasn't happy, so they manipulated the image in the darkroom. Is this any different to the Kate photo, the photo we just saw? I don't think so. But it turned out that the story about the photo was a lie. The lady wasn't a migrant mother. She was actually a Native American. She was quite a rich one as well. She was waiting at camp because her car had broken down and her husband was going to, get somebody to come and help fix it. How about Ansel Adams, epochal landscape photographer? He wanted to show the beauty of nature. He wrote the books on photography, the camera, the negative, the print, like the Kernighan-Ritchie of photo tech manuals, basically. But all of his images were heavily manipulated in the darkroom. That's all right, I suppose. Raising the flag, so lots of photos of flag raising during the wars. The photographer supplied the flag, said to one of the soldiers, go and raise this flag and I'll take a photo of it. I don't know how you can manipulate a scene any more than that, basically. It's almost like photography can be a form of propaganda. Anybody know the story behind these two? So on the left, the photographer shot a photo for the cover and the pyramids were too far apart, so National Geographic just went, I'll just bring them a bit closer in post. The photographer was a bit annoyed about that, but it turned out later that he'd paid the camel riders to go back and forth. So manipulation before is okay, but after is not okay. Steve McCurry's Afghan Girl. So McCurry turned out to be a serial photoshopper, often removing large elements from his photos. And he defended this by saying, I'm not a photojournalist, which is a bit odd because he spent 40 years as a photojournalist. That's kind of a way to say I'm a fine artist, which basically means I can do what I want, which is essentially what fine art photography is. This is Gregory Crutzen, so 2003. Everything in this photo is meticulously planned, so all of the lighting, all of the items, the car, the people. He uses people that light studio scenes and TV locations to do his photos. And he's very successful. He will sell out of an entire print run of his photos before he has shot the photos. So he's incredibly successful. This is The Rhine 2 by Andreas Gursky, 1999. Produced in an edition of 6 and heavily manipulated. So the Rhine looks nothing like this. There's buildings and detail and people and all sorts of stuff, but he just photoshops it all out. This sold for $4.3 million in 2011, so it was the most expensive photo ever sold at auction. This is Murray Fredericks. He runs gas piping up the back of the trees to make it look like the trees are on fire. So it's done in place, it's not done in post, but I'm sure he does some post work anyway as well. A common criticism of fine art photography is, I could have shot that. Exactly, but you didn't. Successful fine art photography is largely about an idea well executed. How about reuse and reworking? This is a big concern at the moment. Artists are up in arms about their work being reused and repurposed and fed into the machines. This is, on the right, a photo by Richard Prince. So he shot a series of photos of Sam Abell's photos, the Malbarad campaigns in the 50s, 60s, 70s. So Prince's picture is a copy, the photo of a copy, the advertisement of a myth, the cowboy. Prince's photos sold for millions, and he's been sued multiple times by artists, and he's never lost a case. Expectation reality. So my partner, Nat, showed me this photo, I think the end of the last year. It's clearly generative AI. I mean, without even looking at the detail. The sheer impracticality of the thing. But also, no human would have arranged the frames like that in the background. I mean, it's just all these odd little things. Sontag said today everything exists to end in a photo, but it's kind of more today nothing exists to end in a photo. 7,000 and odd people didn't care, at least at the time of screenshot. Probably some combination of the two. Don't know or dare care. AI art as a bait, concept art as bait. So this was an event in Scotland, I think, last year. It was a Willy Wonka experience, and they advertised it with these images on the left, but I mean, who looks at the image on the left and thinks it's going to look anything like that in reality? I mean, it's a pretty shoddy attempt on the right, but I mean, come on. I mean, the thing is, this can actually be done very well, though. So IKEA have been generating their imagery for their catalogues for over a decade. So when you flick through an IKEA catalogue, you're looking at things that don't exist, but they exist, but they're not photos of you know what I mean, right? I'm sure nowadays 100% of IKEA's product photography is auto-generated. They don't need photographers anymore. And the same thing is going to happen for stock photography, commercial production work. The meaning of photography is changing. And it's perpetually changing anyway, like the Yes song. I mean, it's been around for 200 years. We had the first fixed images, then we had colliding and daguerreotypes. You know, if you wanted to do it, you could do it, but you might kill yourself in the process because of the chemicals involved. Then Kodak got involved and made it easier for the common man, if you could afford it. Then we got 35mm film, instant film, digital photography 50 years ago. Kodak created the first digital camera, didn't act on it, unfortunately. The rest is history, as they say. 25 years ago, camera phones. Now, generative AI. So to summarize that, you know, you have to be a bit nuts to try this, you have to be able to afford it, you have to want to do it, you have to be there. Now you just have to have an idea. Because everyone is everywhere all the time with a camera, so taking exceptionally well composed, nicely exposed, sharp, beautiful photos isn't going to get you anywhere, at least in the art world, because it's no longer interesting. I mean, it's pretty mundane. And calling yourself an influencer doesn't change that fact. But what we have to ask is, what are the gaps? So this is a box set by Café Royale Books. They publish weekly titles focusing on post-war documentary photography. Books like this. This is Toronto in the 1970s. And each book contains 15 to 20 unseen photos. And the photos are often technically imperfect. But every book contains interesting and important work, filling in the gaps. This is Martin Power interviewing Craig Atkinson, who runs Café Royale Books, and all the books in the background are filling in the gaps as well. It's full of photography beyond the technicalities, like, is it sharp, is it in focus, is it properly exposed, you know, are the colours correct? None of these are really that important. We're more concerned about the gaps. So important and arguably interesting photography is predicated on filling in the gaps. We're kind of awash with technically competent, boring photography, really. And generative AI for most photography is either technically incompetent or not interesting. It's often used as filler. I'm sure you're seeing all of these blog posts with a hero image, which is obviously generative AI. Like, it adds nothing. it's not quite got to the level of mediocrity. It might do soon, and maybe we'll get beyond that, but to me it's unlikely it will ever be able to fill in the gaps. And you need to continue to ask yourself this question, and not just with photography. Anywhere using LLMs, generative AI, Copilot, whatever, what are the gaps? And that is the critical problem with all of this. There will be gaps, and you need to find them. This is the real cactus car. So I shot this photo in Santorini in September 2023, last year. Thank you very much. That was exactly 20 minutes, so we probably can't have any questions. Does anybody have any questions? One question.
Thank you. I really appreciate your talk. Just wondering, in my work, I do some illustration and design work sometimes. And I've noticed it's really handy for concept design. Conceptual design is really fast, and it doesn't have to be anything close to perfect. It just has to plant an idea in someone's head. Any thoughts on that?
So the question is about using it for, I guess, in imagery for prototyping and kind of concepts. Yeah, I think it's really useful. You just have to be aware what the eventual end product is. Like going back to that Willy Wonka concept art, you know, it seems that it could have looked amazing, and then the end product was actually nothing like what they had, you know, come up with as a concept. So I think maybe that's the danger with some of that. Any more questions? No? Okay, great. Thanks.